finally talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. End of the week edition, Air Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Air Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. We're recording Thursday. We used to call it the Fun Friday edition of the Air Torres Sports Podcast. And when I tell you, we got ourselves a lot to talk about. We got a lot of stuff to talk about here to wrap the week. So just before we went on air, Colorado, Deion Sanders picks up another 5-star. I know we've been going a little heavy with the Colorado content, but listen, Coach Prime keeps delivering. He picks up Julian Lewis, the 5-star quarterback, next in line behind Deion Sanders. So we will discuss that. From there, I will give you my week 13 college football picks, talking a little bit about Indiana, Ohio State, talking a little bit about Ole Miss, Florida, Alabama, Oklahoma, Auburn, Texas A&M. Should the Aggies be on upset alert, we'll discuss that. And then from there, we'll do a little college hoops because there's some really fun college hoops coming up over the next couple days. Duke visiting Arizona on Friday night. Talk about a big game, big matchup, big brands, etc. I'll preview that, give you my pick. And then, oh, by the way, Maui Invitational starts on Monday. I think coming off of a college football Saturday, we won't have time to preview it. So we'll do a very quick preview on the Maui Invitational where UConn plays, where producer Matt's Auburn Tigers play, North Carolina, Michigan State, Iowa State, and much, much more. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. First of all, make sure you're subscribed to the Air Torres Sports Podcast. You can do that on Apple. You can do it on Spotify. If you are listening on YouTube, make sure to click the subscribe button. New clips, new videos going up every single day. We're almost at 47,000 subscribers on YouTube. Cannot thank everybody enough for your support there. I continue to be blown away by the interest in this show, by the support of this show, both on YouTube and, of course, the podcast as well. Also, before we get started, you already know what I'm going to do. I'm going to shout out our partners, our friends, and that is Cauli Puffs and CauliPuffs.com. So here's the bottom line. Thanksgiving's coming. You need a snack for around the house. The turkey isn't quite out yet. Well, what are you going to eat? What are you going to do? You got to get yourself some Cauli Puffs. Okay, so we've told you all about Cauli Puffs. This is the healthy alternative to the snack food in your grocery aisle. You don't want the unhealthy crap, but you also want something that tastes delicious. Well, Cauli Puffs, baked, not fried, avocado oil, healthy ingredients. But here is the best part. Best part is they taste delicious, okay? That is what makes Cauli Puffs different. They taste good, but they're healthy. They're good for you. Family-owned company, started not far from where I am here in California. And Joey, founder of the company, is no different than you and I. Football fan on the couch, has young kids, trying to figure out what can I feed them that are healthy but delicious, but what can I watch? What can I eat while I'm watching college football, while I'm watching the NFL every single Saturday, every single Sunday? And he came up with Cauli Puffs. So again, baked, not fried, avocado oil. They are delicious as well. Don't take my word for it. Order some yourself. You can get some at CauliPuffs.com. But here's the crazy part. If you want to try them out, they now have a special Black Friday offer that is available on Amazon. Yes, they are available on Amazon.com. So you're on Amazon, you're shopping, you're looking for gifts for the holidays, you're looking for car parts, whatever you're doing on Amazon, throw some Cauli Puffs in your cart. And here's the cool thing. Black Friday sale through December 2nd. All Cauli Puffs orders on Amazon are 25% off. You don't need a fancy promo code. You don't need anything else. People have asked me, no promo code needed. You don't need code Torres, code Cauli, code Puff, nothing. Just go to Amazon.com, order your Cauli Puffs. They're 25% off. You can also order them right from CauliPuffs.com. But that's it. It's a busy Thursday in college sports. There is no more time to waste. Let's get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day, first of all, drop your comments, drop your thoughts on the weekend ahead in college football, in college basketball, whatever. But we got to get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day, Coach Prime does it again, baby. That's right. And I know some of you are going to say, Torres, you talk about Colorado too much, okay? Well, here's the bottom line. One, they're winning. Right now, if they win out, they're in the college football playoff. You know that. We will preview the Kansas game coming up here momentarily. 2, Coach Prime's always in the news. This week, everybody's trying to give him the Cowboys job. Even though we talked about it on Wednesday, I don't think he wants the Cowboys job. But the big news from Thursday, not totally surprising, but significant nonetheless, as Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes have picked up, I would argue this is Coach Prime's single biggest recruiting win since Travis Hunter, as 5-star quarterback Julian Lewis, one of the top quarterbacks in America, was committed to USC as recently as about a week ago. He decommits over the weekend, and he ends up a Colorado Buffalo. That is right. Colorado gets their quarterback of the future, the man to replace Shedeur Sanders, hopefully if things go well. Let's go ahead and dive into this. And before I do, a quick reminder, as always, we have just started our Torres on CU account. Torres on CU, of course, we have team-specific pages for Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, UConn, Arizona, on and on and on. Well, I bring it up to very simply say, our newest page is Torres on CU. If you're a Buffs fan finding this video or clip on YouTube or podcast, do us a favor, follow us on Torres on CU as well. With that said, let's dive into the news. Again, Julian Lewis, 5-star quarterback, flips about a week ago from USC. And ultimately, what I would say, don't think this is really surprising news. The news, by the way, coming via the Pat McAfee show. He actually committed on Pat McAfee, so that was pretty cool. But listen, this is not surprising news, okay? So if you follow, even if you peripherally follow recruiting, let's not say that you're the biggest recruiting, to use a bad pun, let's say you're not the biggest recruiting buff out there, okay? Well, at the same time, this kid, interesting story. He's really been kind of a phenomenon, was the number 1 ranked player in the class of 2026, okay? Commits to USC in the summer of 23. And I remember even saying on the show at the time, like, listen, we're not going to talk about the number 1 player committing. It was like June or July. It was really slow. And I remember saying, we're not going to break this down because so much can happen before he actually ends up enrolling in college. Well, I bring it up because he ends up reclassifying, skipping his sophomore year, and he's been committed to USC for basically 18 months now. But what's crazy was during the recruitment, there was never really a moment where it felt like he was committed to USC. It's like your buddy that's like, oh, yeah, I'm married. And then every time you see him, he's out at the bar and taking selfies with maybe people that he shouldn't be taking selfies with. That's kind of the Julian Lewis recruitment, okay? Commits to USC, but he took multiple visits to Colorado throughout this process, took multiple visits to Indiana. Of course, Indiana, he had ties to the coaching staff there. And beyond that, took visits to Auburn, took visits to Georgia. He was actually just at Georgia last weekend for the Georgia-Tennessee game. So he's been taking visits. I think USC probably in the last 4 or 5 weeks basically said, look, we got to start looking at alternatives. They actually flipped a quarterback named Husan Longstreet, 5-star quarterback from California last weekend. And so once that news came out, I think they kind of behind the scenes let Julian Lewis know, hey, we're going another direction. We wish you luck. Julian Lewis decommits on Sunday, and he ends up a Buffalo. Once he decommitted, it felt like it was inevitable. We had producer Matt make the graphic 3, 4, 5 days ago. It felt like this was coming. But I'll say this, it doesn't make the news any less significant, okay? This news is significant for a number of reasons, the biggest one being pretty straightforward. Colorado now has its quarterback of the future post Shedeur Sanders. I think it's really interesting. Producer Matt, if you could pop up the picture that we have seen float around social media, Shedeur, there's a picture of him actually handing Julian Lewis keys. And that's obviously a metaphor for Shedeur handing the keys to the program over to Julian Lewis. And so listen, Coach Prime isn't promising this kid the starting spot, nothing like that. But at the same time, it's kind of interesting and it's kind of worth noting is that there is no obvious succession plan for Shedeur at Colorado. Couple backups, they're going to have their opportunities, but I think long-term, Julian Lewis is coming to Colorado to play and play early. Now, is it a DJ Lagway situation where maybe he splits reps early with a veteran next year? We'll find out. Is it a Dylan Raiola situation where he gets the job day one? We'll find out. But he said on Pat McAfee, he is enrolling in December. He's coming for spring ball. He's coming to win the starting job. And I think this just sets up a fascinating situation at USC or at Colorado, because they now have their quarterback of the future. They now have their replacement for Shedeur Sanders. And let me take it a step further. I think there are two big picture ramifications from this commitment. I think the first one, Julian Lewis now becomes Colorado's lead recruiter, even more so than Coach Prime, even more so than his coaching staff. And two, I do think it probably, in my opinion, backs up what I said on yesterday's show. Yesterday's show, we were talking about the Deion Sanders to the Dallas Cowboys rumors. And I said, look, Coach Prime should do what's best for him. It's not my, listen, he shouldn't take my advice. He certainly wouldn't. He's doing pretty well in life without listening to Torres, okay? But we talked about yesterday the possibilities of him going pro. I didn't buy it. And so those are the two things that really stand out to me about what this commitment means. In terms of the recruiting stuff, listen, I ain't a recruiting expert, okay? But if you just follow the tea leaves, this is a big commitment for a number of different reasons. The first one is, as we know, any time that you get a big-time quarterback committed, doesn't matter if he's a sophomore in high school, doesn't matter if he's a senior in high school that's going to enroll in a month, he now becomes your best recruiter. And so now Julian Lewis becomes Colorado's key recruiter. We know that great players want to play with other great players. Coach Prime has always had success recruiting the portal, recruiting transfers, all of that. But don't stop for a second and think that Julian Lewis isn't going to recruit some of his high school friends as well. He said it on Pat McAfee. This is only the beginning. I trust Coach Prime and Coach Shermer to help me become the player I want to be. And so it is only the beginning. And I think it's the beginning of what could be a very interesting recruiting run for the Colorado Buffaloes over the next couple weeks. First of all, take out the portal for half a second. And this is what kind of is so insane to me about the portal is if you go through the history, if Coach Prime gets you on campus, you basically commit on the spot, especially in the portal era. Remember last year, going into the portal, everybody was like, well, Coach Prime, I mean, the O-line stinks. And I remember Coach Prime said after the UCLA game, he said something to the effect of like, well, they said, how do you fix your O-line? He goes, we got to go find a new O-line. And I remember that because people were like, you can't say that. Who's going to want to play for him? And then the portal opened. And then they literally brought like 6 offensive linemen to campus that first weekend, and they all committed. And so I bring it up because Coach Prime is going to kill in the portal. I think it's interesting. He killed in the portal last winter, and that was off of a 4-8 season. What is he going to do in the portal this offseason, coming off at minimum 8, probably 9 to 10 win season? And oh, by the way, they could be visiting campus while Colorado is preparing for the college football playoff. So the best is yet to come in the portal, but I also think the best is yet to come in the high school ranks. Julian Lewis is going to help Colorado recruit. Thought it was interesting. USC, by the way, poor Lincoln Riley can't do anything right now, although I think they're actually doing okay. They got their quarterback, whatever. But they did have a 4-star offensive tackle committed named Carday Smith. He decommitted earlier this week. And guess when he decommitted, who was the first one in the mentions, in the comments? Yeah. It was Julian Lewis. You can see it right there on screen. Julian Lewis commenting on Carday Smith's decommitment with a little bit of a smiley emoji, a little bit of a winky emoji. So I think Julian Lewis has one of his offensive tackles of the future, of course, factoring in that, oh, by the way, Jordan Seaton, never forget the 5-star from a year ago, is already on campus. And unless something crazy happens, he ain't going anywhere. So Julian Lewis is going to help recruit Carday Smith. And then I think what's really interesting, and we talked about this on Wednesday's show when we were talking about Coach Prime in the NFL, is what becomes very interesting is now Colorado just came off of maybe their biggest recruiting weekend under Coach Prime since he's gotten there. It wasn't just Carday Smith who was there for a second, third, fourth time, okay? So one, maybe he had the 4-star offensive tackle. But two, even beyond that, you know who else was on campus? Michael Carroll. 5-star offensive lineman committed to Alabama. Listen, I'm not a recruiting expert. I'm not claiming that I know what's going on, and I still think the kid ends up at Alabama. But that shows you the kind of caliber of player that Coach Prime is getting to campus. I think it's also interesting. London Merritt, 4-star, committed to Ohio State. There is real buzz that kid could flip, that kid could decommit, that kid could end up at Colorado. 4-star named Nathaniel Owusu-Boateng. We talked about him on Sunday's show. Believed to be a Michigan lean. Well, guess what? He's taken 2 visits to Colorado in about the last 4 to 5 weeks. Alex McPherson committed to Oklahoma State. You go on and on down the list. But the bottom line is, like I said, Colorado is coming off one of the biggest recruiting weekends, probably the biggest recruiting weekend since Coach Prime took over. And then on top of that, you also have the factor that Julian Lewis is now committed. And so I don't think they're done. Listen, Coach Prime is never going to take a 28-man high school recruiting class. But at the same time, they are going to get guys between now and National Signing Day, between now and the middle of December, when pen is put to paper. Pen's put to paper the first week of December, but you get the point. Some guys don't sign on the first day, whatever. So that's the big takeaway to me. One, I think they're going to end up with a pretty good high school class. They're going to crush in the portal. But here's the other thing. I think this, to me, solidifies that Coach Prime is happy at Colorado, and I don't think he's going anywhere. Now, listen, stuff changes. I'm not saying he is committed there for the rest of his career, for another 25 years, okay? But what I am saying is a couple things. One, I've never bought that he's going to another college, at least not anytime soon. This is not a use Colorado to get to the SEC. Use Colorado to get to USC. Use Colorado for this. I believe that he's happy at Colorado. We talked about it on Wednesday's show. The fact that Rick George, the AD, believes in him, I think that matters. And so, yeah, down the road, if it's a year or two and Florida State, his alma mater, opens up, he's probably going to have to consider it. If one of the elite jobs open up, he'll have to consider it. But I think he's happy at Colorado, and I think I don't see the NFL thing. And I know that people closer to him are adamant that it could happen and that it might happen. Michael Irvin has been talking about it nonstop. I was actually doing some stuff around the house and saw he was on TV on FS1 saying, no, I still believe Coach Prime is going to take the Dallas Cowboys job. Now, again, Michael Irvin might have a little incentive to believe that or push that narrative, but it doesn't change the fact that I just don't see it. I don't think he wants to coach pros, as I said on Wednesday's show. And I know I keep referencing Wednesday's show, but we just talked about it the other day. Is Coach Prime going to be excited to go to the NFL, to deal with Micah Parsons' podcast, and Dak Prescott's got a bunch of handlers, and now Dak's unhappy because you want to draft Shador, and I think he likes coaching young men, helping boys become men, helping boys get to the highest level where he obviously played. So maybe I'm dead wrong. Maybe in 6 weeks, he's the Cowboys coach, and I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. And the other thing, too, by the way, really quick, because I know I'm going long on this segment. I don't think he wants to follow Shador. Like I'm sure he loves coaching Shador, but do you want to be an NFL head coach where your son's the quarterback? And oh, by the way, yes. If the Raiders get the first pick and the Raiders job opens, maybe it changes things. If the Giants get the first pick and the Giants job opens, maybe it changes things. But if it's somewhere where it's the Cowboys, you got to trade Dak and you got to deal with a locker room when half the guys like Dak and half of the guys think it's daddy ball. I don't think he necessarily wants that. So I could go on and on. The point I'm trying to make, this is a great day for Colorado football, and I think it proves that Coach Prime is staying for a little while. I know Julian Lewis could leave with him if he goes to another college job. I don't think he's taking any other college jobs anytime soon. And I don't think I don't know Coach Prime. I don't believe he would be selling all of these kids on coming to Colorado. One, investing his own time, but two, lying to their faces if he really did not plan on being there in the future. So it's an exciting time for Colorado. And lastly, let me say this, is we've been over time and time again, this Colorado story, what Coach Prime has done, all of that good stuff. Now's not the time to revisit, they were for it. But it is kind of incredible. It's kind of incredible that this wasn't as big of a story as I thought it was going to be. It's Coach Prime flipped a 5-star. Yeah, that's kind of what he does. Well, this is a guy that was at Jackson State 2 years ago. This is Colorado. This is not Ohio State flipping a 5-star. This is not Alabama flipping a 5-star, LSU, USC, whoever. This is Colorado. And I think it is so cool that this guy has made Colorado a destination, a school in the Big 12. We talk about, we've talked all week about the playoff rankings and how many Big 10 teams and how many SEC teams. And it's these kids want to go to the Big 12, to Boulder, to play for Colorado and the coaching staff that Deion Sanders has put together. This is an awesome story. I love it. Congrats, Colorado fans. You got your QB of the future. I think it's an exciting story, and I don't think Coach Prime is done yet. And by the way, if you don't like the Coach Prime coverage, forgive me. But we're going to be talking a lot about him in December in the lead up to signing day, during portal season. And oh, by the way, I think there's a pretty good chance we could be talking about Colorado in the college football playoff, preparing for either an opening round game, depending on the seeding, or obviously one of those quarterfinals. So congrats, Colorado fans. You got your guy. I mentioned it off the top. Do me a favor. If you love Colorado football, follow our Torres on CU page on Twitter. All things Colorado, all things Coach Prime, all things recruiting. It's going to be humming over these next couple months. By the way, if you're a college student, if you're an intern, if you want some internship credit, hit up your boy Torres, Aaron Torres podcast questions at gmail.com. Maybe we can get you an internship helping me run it, because I can't do it alone, because there's going to be a lot of Colorado news in the coming weeks. All right, so what we're going to do, take a quick break, come back. When we come back, I appreciate that the chat is just on fire right now. Maybe react a little bit to Julian Lewis, and then we will get to week 13 in college football. I will give out my official picks. We'll talk a little bit about Indiana, Ohio State. We'll talk a little bit about Alabama, Oklahoma. We'll talk a little bit about Ole Miss, Florida. Quick break. Be right back. Before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what. Do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more. All available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. More Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Deion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres podcast questions at gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So want to go ahead and get to some of your Coach Prime Colorado Julian Lewis reaction. You know, on radio, what we tend to do, have a big topic to lead the show. Then you open up the phone lines. There are no phone lines on the Aaron Torres pod, but we do have some comments from the comment section. Let's get to those quick before I make my week 13 picks. This is from James Bond. Wow. 007 just chilling in the chat today. We appreciate your interest in the show, 007. He says another one. Travis Cormani with why am I blanking on with an asterisk? Jordan Seaton and now Juju, but Prime needs to make home visits. Here come the dominoes. You know, I'll say this, James Bond. First of all, thank you for supporting the show. We appreciate it. Let us know when you got a new movie coming out. But you know, I was thinking about this. You know, Coach Prime really, all things considered, is not that aggressive in high school recruiting. And so it's like now he gets his quarterback and he's really gone full speed ahead at IMG, which is one of the top prep schools in the country. But if I was him, if I was on his staff, I would be telling him, Coach Prime, let's just get on the phone with every single 5-star right now. And I think, listen, I respect Prime because what I believe is that he really, his focus is on, you know, smart, fast, tough with discipline. And so I don't think he's necessarily looking to sign the biggest class or the best players on paper. I think he wants to do his homework on the kids that are coming in. But it's like, man, I just find it hard to believe. It doesn't matter who you're committed to, Alabama, Oregon, Tennessee, Georgia. Like if Coach Prime calls you, are you not picking up the phone? Are you not trying to make a visit really quick before making your final decision? It'd be crazy to me. Like if he went full speed ahead in high school recruiting, I think he could put together a top 10 class. I actually don't even think there's a doubt. I just don't think he wants to bring in 25, 28, 30 freshmen every single year. Let's keep it going. Any other questions before we get to I like this. Coach Prime must get a new contract before the end of the year, $15 million per year. Well, what I would say to that is that he's going to get an extension, and he deserves an extension. And Colorado, it's almost like the Indiana situation. I have to assume that Colorado right now is really working hard behind the scenes to make sure that he gets locked up long term. And I was thinking about this is I do wonder if some of the Michael Irvin narrative. Now, I don't really believe this because I think Michael Irvin just wants the Cowboys to be awesome. But I do wonder if Michael Irvin keeps bringing Coach Prime's name to the forefront to make sure that he gets paid somewhere. If it's not going to be the Cowboys, you better get that extension going at Colorado because he is going to have options after this season. So I don't know that I necessarily think that he's leaving. But what I will say is that hold on one sec. Is that what I do think is that he is going to get a new contract. Now, $15 million a year. I'll say this. I am not an economist, okay? I'm not an accountant. I don't think Colorado could afford $15 million a year. And I'll say this. I don't want to speak for Coach Prime. Don't know him, know some of his staff. Obviously, we love what they do there. I think he'd probably just, I'll take a nice significant pay raise and put some money back into the NIL funds and all that stuff. $15 million a year, I think would be pretty tough at Colorado, but the man is deserving of an extension. He has been awesome. Producer Matt, anything else before we switch gears, get to our week 13 picks? And by the way, we do have our primetime t-shirts available. Producer Matt will throw the link into the comment section. You want to support the show, grab one of those. Great Christmas gift, great holiday gift. The primetime t-shirts as well. Turbo says, the narrative was just saying Deion was playing daddy ball. Now they want him to take a job and draft his son. I agree. And the other thing, a couple things on the Coach Prime stuff with the NFL. One, I listen, not claiming to speak for the man, okay? I do think he really enjoys coaching college football. And listen, I know college football has its issues. And I know if you're Nick Saban and you're 71, 72, you don't want to deal with all the nonsense. But I think Coach Prime's in a rare spot where he doesn't have to sell NIL, where he's not, he could just say to a kid, if this is an NIL bidding war, we're going to have to pass and we're going to have to, you're going to have to go somewhere else and we wish you the best. But if you want to come play for a Hall of Fame player, we got a bunch of gold jackets in that building. Warren Sapp is obviously on the staff. Pat Shurmur's a former NFL head coach and offensive coordinator. Damian Lewis is the defensive line coach. Phil Lodeholt, of course, played in the NFL. He's the offensive line coach. You want to come here and train to be a pro? Come here. And so I just bring it up because this narrative that he wants to go to the NFL, I think he likes coaching college football. I think he likes the impact that he has on young men. And I'll also say this. I think there's a lot of coaches that want to rush off to the pros because they think it's a better quote unquote lifestyle. And in some ways, I'm sure it is. But if there's anybody that knows the other side of that, the frustration that star players can cause, the frustration of, just dealing with adults, I think it's Coach Prime as well, right? And I know I keep saying it, and I hate to beat a dead horse, and we're going to get to the week 13 picks in a minute, but I just look at the situation. Like, let's just use the Dallas Cowboys. Because, by the way, the Dallas Cowboys is still probably the best situation he can go to. Now, you'd have to trade Dak, which I don't know how that would work, but it's better than the Raiders. It's better than the New York Giants right now. But if you're Coach Prime and you're going to go to Dallas, one, you're going to deal with all the Dak nonsense, trying to figure out how to move him. Two, you get Shador. You have a locker room full of veterans. And it's going to, and like, again, I mentioned it. Michael Parsons does a podcast every week. I don't know that Coach Prime wants to go to his Monday presser or Tuesday presser and have to talk about, well, Michael Parsons said this on his podcast. What does it mean? I saw this. CeeDee Lamb and somebody else were out at the club after getting their butts kicked on Monday Night Football. It's like, I don't think he wants to deal with that. So it is what it is. I'm excited about the future of Colorado. I hope he stays for a long time. It's a really fun, different topic to talk about, right? We talk about Alabama all the time. We talk about Georgia all the time. We talk about Tennessee all the time, Ohio State, Penn State, whoever. I hate to say it. We talk about Colorado because of Coach Prime. Coach Prime leaves. I don't know how many Colorado segments we're doing on this show, but credit to Coach Prime for landing Julian Lewis. Really quickly, speaking of Colorado, let's get to our Week 13 college football picks. First off, I'm going to say the cliche thing that everybody's saying. I don't know how the heck it's week 13. The season goes by so fast and it's so crazy. Like, feels like we were just talking about Colorado, North Dakota State. Feels like we were just talking about USC, LSU. Feels like we were talking about whatever, whatever the week 1 games were. Miami, Florida. We fired and rehired Billy Napier like 7 times already this season. But with that said, let's get to the week 13 college football picks. First one that I want to get to is the big one. Top 5 matchup in Columbus, Indiana at Ohio State. Indiana, 13.5-point favorite. The over-under set at 51.5. I actually like the under 51.5. First of all, the big news. By the way, we do have the college football betting pod and YouTube channel. Producer Matt, throw the YouTube channel in the comments section on YouTube. If you want to support the show, go ahead, click that YouTube channel as well. Just follow that page. We do our deep dive breakdowns there. But I bring it up because since we recorded our show this week, front end of the week, the big news is Ohio State has lost now a second starting offensive lineman for the season. Seth McLaughlin, starting center, out with an Achilles injury. You feel terrible, but why that's significant? Remember, Ohio State already lost their starting left tackle prior to the Nebraska game. They struggled against Nebraska. They moved their starting left guard to left tackle. Now you've lost your starting center for the season. And I'm sorry, at some point it catches up to you. But here's the thing about Ohio State. They've been kind of led by their defense all year. We spend so much time talking about Will Howard, Jeremiah Smith, Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins. We forget, like, the defense has been really good, top 10 nationally. And the thing that I go back to with Indiana, I bet the Michigan game, I took the over in that game. And what was obvious to me was Indiana against the size, speed, and physicality of Michigan. I love the Indiana story. They really struggled to move the football. We can deny it. We can pretend. I love Coach Sig. I think it's a great story. I think they should be in the playoff at 11-1, even if they lose to Ohio State. But they really struggled to move the ball. So I think Ohio State gets conservative with a lot of their play calling in this game, trying to protect the offensive line. I just think they want to get out with a win and figure things out going into the Michigan game. In Indiana, I don't know that they're going to be able to move the ball. Do like Ohio State to win 24-14. Do think the under is my favorite pick at 51.5. Just a game that just, listen, there's a conversation to be had about Indiana's playoff opportunities if they get blown out. There's an opportunity if they win, if they whatever. But I just think this is close, low scoring. And then, come Monday, we can have the conversation about the playoff if necessary. Let's go to the second big game in the noon Eastern window. Ole Miss at Florida. Okay, so Ole Miss is a 10.5-point favorite. The over-under set at 55.5. Interesting game, right? Because Florida, they're coming off that big emotional win against LSU, and they finally figured it out. So maybe they can knock off Ole Miss at home. What does it mean? Is it possible? Can they win a second straight game? I don't know. The spread is a stay away to me, but this is another one where I actually like the under. First of all, I went back and looked it up. Of Ole Miss's SEC games, only one has gone past 56 points. That was Arkansas when they put up 63 on their own, okay? So everyone is so focused on Ole Miss. I think people don't realize or people forget that this is a team that while we think of Lane Kiffin as the offensive savant, it's the defense that's carrying them. Go back and look at their games. Gave up 10 points to Georgia, 3 points to South Carolina. Against LSU, it was 23-23 going into overtime. So close, low-scoring games. And the thing with Florida, I think the story's awesome. And I've said my piece on Billy Napier. He deserves another year. I'm happy he's getting it. But they have improved this season because of the run game. Well, this is the best run defense in the SEC. I don't think they're able to run the ball. DJ Lagway, for as good as he's been, he's an under 56% complete or under 60% completion percentage guy. I think it's about 56, 57%. So I like the under. I think Ole Miss wins like 27-10. And I think they keep their playoff hopes alive. Let's get to the 3:30 Eastern window. And how about this? We just talked about Colorado. We're going to get to Colorado, Kansas in half a second. How many people realize what's at stake when BYU visits Arizona State? Arizona State is a 3.5-point favorite in this game. By the way, the crowd should be crazy. BYU, for people who don't know, they have a large contingent of fans in Arizona, easy to get to. Our Torres on BYU page is going to be live in the stadium for that game, okay? But I bring it up because you look at BYU and you look at the success that they've had, I think people are completely forgetting about Arizona State. Arizona State is also 8-2 coming into this game. Only one loss with starting quarterback Sam Leavitt playing. And the crazy part about about Arizona State in this game is that they actually match up very well with BYU. BYU, of course, last week they lose the game to Kansas. The funny part was BYU probably should have lost some games. I don't know if that's the one that they should have lost. BYU did not play poorly in that game, but Kansas finds a way to win. This game kind of worries me, though, from BYU's perspective. And the reason why, BYU does two things really well that has put them in position to be at 9-1 with 2 games left in the season. What BYU does very well, they force turnovers. 22 in however many games, how many games have they played now? 10 games. So 22 in 10 games. That's an insane number. It's like top 10 in the country. And then they have big explosive plays on offense. Well, Arizona State, top 10 in the country in fewest turnovers, top 10 in the country in fewest plays of 30-plus yards. So if BYU can't force turnovers, if BYU can't get big plays on offense, this just favors Arizona State to me. Should be a great atmosphere. Sun Devil Stadium, I mentioned on the other show. I have a buddy who went to ASU. They thought they were getting College Game Day this week. They were fired up. They're disappointed, but the crowd will be great. Give me Arizona State -3.5. Let's keep it going. Stay in the Big 12. We spent how much time talking Colorado? Colorado is going to Kansas. Colorado is a 2.5-point favorite in this game. And I'm taking Colorado. Bottom line with this is pretty straightforward. We were early on the Vegas is off on Colorado stuff. And we took, after the UCF game, we've basically took them every week. We took them against Cincinnati to cover. They do. We took them against Kansas State to cover. They do, even in a loss when they were banged up. Took them against Arizona, easily covered. Took them against Texas Tech. They easily covered. And then last week I got spooked because they were an 11.5-point home favorite against Utah. And I said, Utah's defense is good. Well, guess what happened? They put up 49 points and they won going away. And so with respect to Kansas, who's really good, really well coached, I just think Colorado's on a mission right now. And I think the thing with Colorado is even if they make a mistake, even if Shedeur throws a pick, even if they give up a big play, they can flip it like that. They can come back and, have a 2-play 71-yard scoring drive. And all of a sudden you're up, 14-7. All of a sudden it's 14-14 and you don't even know what hit you. And so I like Colorado to win because they can just make so many big plays so consistently on offense. Kansas, very good. They're improving. They've obviously had back-to-back big wins against Iowa State and at BYU last week. I'll say Colorado wins like 38-21. By the way, it is worth noting also, this game is not in Lawrence. Kansas's stadium is under renovation, so this game will be at Arrowhead Stadium. Couple more games before we get to a little bit of college hoops and get out of here. Couple thoughts here. So next game on the schedule, it is producer Matt, pop it up. I forget which game I even gave you, to be perfectly honest. So next game on the schedule, it is Kentucky at Texas. So funny story. And I know, whatever. I won't tell the story because I don't want to throw another media member under the bus, but some people are trying to make the argument. Could Texas be looking ahead to A&M? Could Texas be this? No. Texas is going to destroy Kentucky. Okay. Kentucky fans, I know you agree. I'm sorry. It's the truth. It's going to get ugly. And it's funny because I saw the so by the way, my pick is Texas. They're a 20.5-point favorite. I like Texas to win and cover. But it was funny because I've seen a lot of pushback about, well, Texas, they struggled at Arkansas. It's like Arkansas still is a tough place to play. Tennessee did beat them there. But at the same time, it was also really the first major road environment that Texas has played in all year long since the Michigan game in week 2. Remember, neutral site game against Oklahoma counted as a road game for them. Then they went to Vandy, where they probably had more fans there than Vandy did. So this was the first big road environment. They lose. They come back. They're playing a Kentucky team that, I'm sorry, that team has quit on Mark Stoops, okay? They need 2 wins to get bowl eligible. I don't think anybody in that locker room cares about going to the lowest level bowl game imaginable. And I think Mark Stoops, he's had some comments this week about raising money, about portal additions. I think they're just kind of over this season. Remember Bill Self, NCAA tournament last year, said something to the effect of, we started planning for next year a month ago. That feels like Mark Stoops now. I'll say Texas wins 38-10, wins going away, wins comfortably, covers the 20.5 easily. A couple other results before we get out of here. Alabama at Oklahoma. Alabama is a 13.5 point favorite. The over-under has dipped to 46.5. I actually still like the under of 46.5. Two reasons why. Jalen Milroe, love what he does. 180 yards rushing, 4 touchdowns 2 weeks ago against LSU. But here's the truth. What is Alabama's offense outside of Jalen Milroe running? We don't know. And so I'm not sold that they've magically figured things out because they beat a lousy LSU team, even if it was on the road. The other thing, Oklahoma, we can criticize the offense. The defense is still really good. Top 25 nationally in total defense. And remember the teams that they've played. They've played Texas. They've played Ole Miss. They've played some of these elite teams in the SEC. And then on top of that, they have a top 20 run defense. And we know that Jalen Milroe wants to run the ball. And Kalen DeBoer wants to run the ball with Jalen Milroe. So give me Alabama. I'll say like 20-6, 21-7 final score. The under 46.5, even though it's low, one of my favorite picks. Last game on the docket. Can't believe I'm doing it. Auburn hosting Texas A&M. Texas A&M just a 2.5 point favorite in this game. So interesting game. I think everybody knows, but Texas A&M tied with Texas, first place in the SEC standings. If Texas A&M wins out, they're going to the SEC championship game. And if you believe what the committee tells you, you're going to the SEC championship game, you're going to the college football playoff. So 2 big games ahead for Texas A&M. This one does worry me though. Bottom line, Auburn, listen, I know a lot of you don't like Hugh Freeze. Whatever. I like him. I think he's transparent. I think he made mistakes. Whatever. Who cares? Hugh Freeze, I said Kentucky quit on Mark Stoops. I don't think Auburn has quit on Hugh Freeze. I just think they're trying to figure out how to win with a bunch of young players and a 6th-year quarterback who isn't very good. And so you look at their results this year. Late pick 6, or they would have beaten Oklahoma. If it isn't for 4 turnovers against Cal, they beat Cal. If it isn't for 5 turnovers against Arkansas, they probably beat Arkansas. If it isn't for a late comeback against Missouri, they probably beat Missouri. I'm not saying like Auburn could be in this playoff picture with Texas and all these teams. They're not as bad as their record indicates. Texas A&M, good on offense, but Marcel Reed, can he make enough plays with his arm? Don't know how many people realize this. You know, Auburn has a top 15 defense in America. I actually like Auburn to win. I like Auburn to cover the +2.5. A&M fans, I'm sorry, by the way. You know that the most peak A&M thing that could happen to you in this program, lose to Auburn, get knocked out of the playoff picture, then beat Texas next week. I hate to say it, but that's the vibe that I got. So those are my official picks for the week. I just gave them out. I'll read them again really quickly here in half a second. But my best bets for college football, again, let's see here. Let's just get them up for you. Let me get them out right here. They are, as I said, Indiana, Ohio State under 51.5, under 55.5 of Ole Miss, Florida, Arizona State -3.5 against BYU, Colorado -2.5 against Kansas, Texas -20.5 against Kentucky, Oklahoma, Alabama under 46.5, Auburn +2.5 at A&M. By the way, as always, you can follow our college football betting YouTube channel. And also, on top of that, you can also follow Aaron Torres online, where I make my picks every week, and the Instagram page, Aaron Torres Pod, where we post our picks. All right. Really quickly, before we wrap the show, just want you to know, I love college football. So excited for what's coming the next month. But college hoops, next week is like my favorite week of the year. Feast week is coming. It's not my actual favorite week of the year, but it's in the short conversation. You get to spend time with family, NFL football, but a lot of college hoops, okay? And so all the big tournaments are next week. Maui starts on Monday. We'll get to that in a minute. We'll preview that because we're not going to have time on Monday's show. But where I want to start, a very intriguing game in Tucson, Arizona on Friday night. Okay, listen, I'll say this for college hoops. People crap on college hoops. We have had some great Friday night early season games. We had North Carolina at Kansas. We had a few weeks ago, we had last week we had Wisconsin at Arizona at Wisconsin. We had Alabama at Purdue. And so we have a great top 20 matchup in Tucson. And I think the top 20 is a little bit deceiving because both of these were top 10 teams coming into the season. Each has played a big game. Each has taken a loss. Duke is at Arizona, true home game. We don't get enough home and homes in college basketball. But how about this? Arizona actually a 1.5 point favorite coming into this game, over under set at 156.5. And so when I look at this game, let's talk about both teams. I want to start with Duke. And listen, man, like I know that it's so easy to poke at Duke and they stink and they're soft and they're this and they're that. I came away impressed with the Kentucky game. Now, Kentucky fans, we all know you deserve to win. You were the better team down the stretch. You made more plays. But let's also call a spade a spade. Duke was probably the better team for about the first 32 to 33 minutes. And I look at Duke and I said, listen, good teams are going to take bad losses. And I didn't come away like frustrated or angry or mad or disappointed in Duke. Instead, it was the opposite. I came away impressed. First of all, Cooper Flagg, listen, we've talked about him already, but it's worth noting. This kid is a lot different than a lot of the 5-star one-and-done players who have come to college basketball before him. Mentioned it earlier, but this is not the kid. This is not Kevin Durant at Texas. This isn't Zion at Duke. It's not Paolo Banchero, who, by the way, I saw on Thanksgiving week drop 30-something on Gonzaga. Cooper Flagg is never going to be a guy that just gets 36, in back-to-back. He's not going to be the kind of kid that gets you 38 in a college game. What he does, he is an across-the-board contributor, an across-the-board difference maker. And this is kind of a crazy stat that I did not realize until my buddy Mike Luke, who covers Arizona, pointed out to me the other day. As of right now, coming into this game, Cooper Flagg leads Duke in points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks. That is bananas, okay? So the kid does it all, across-the-board difference maker, gets others involved, runs the offense, gets, weak side help on all that good stuff. And so I just bring it up because he is a very talented player, but I was impressed with some of the other guys on Duke in that Kentucky game as well. And not just the Kentucky game, but in general early in the season. Con Knipple, you can't forget that name, okay? Listen, he struggled down the stretch against Kentucky. He had a hot start. He struggled in the second half, but he was still a guy that in that Kentucky game went for 14, was averaging like 18 coming into the game. And listen, I've seen some like he's a top 10 pick kind of stuff. And like, I think that's probably a little bit much, but he's a really good player. He can get hot if you don't, if you focus too much on Cooper Flagg. And then I really like the other freshman, Kaman Malawach, who of course is the big man down low. He cramped in the Kentucky game, but 7'1", 7'2", played in the Olympics for the South Sudan. And I think he's a difference maker, size, athleticism, rim protection, shot blocking for the Blue Devils. What's interesting, they're facing a really good Arizona team. Now, Arizona played at Wisconsin last Friday. And I'll just say this. It was going on kind of the same time as the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight. You think the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight was tough to watch, which we should have talked about on the pod, but that's another conversation. You think the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight was tough to watch? You should have watched Arizona-Wisconsin, okay? 103-88 is the final score. That sounds like a great game. No, it was not. And it was solely because the refs basically hijacked the game, okay? So in that game, for people who did not see it, we had a total of, I want to make sure I get these stats correct, okay? So in Wisconsin, Arizona, 87 total free throws on 63 foul attempts. That is the most absurd thing that I have ever heard in my life. It is blasphemous. It is unacceptable. It was disappointing. It really hijacked kind of the game itself. Now, what stands out to me about Arizona at this time of year is that I still think they're really good. I had them in my top 10 in the preseason. But the thing that stands out is I just don't think they're as deep as they were a year ago. Remember, a year ago with Arizona, they had Jaden Bradley and KJ Lewis coming off the bench, and that was in addition to Pella Larson, who got drafted by the Miami Heat, Keyshawn Johnson, who plays for the Miami Heat. It was in addition to Umar Ballo, who's now at Indiana. Kylan Boswell, who's obviously transferred to Illinois, played Alabama the other night. So I think they were a little bit deeper last year. Obviously, they had Caleb Love as well. And that's kind of my big picture concern about Arizona in general. Do they have enough guys that can consistently get you production? Because Jaden Bradley's been awesome, 22 points against Wisconsin. KJ Lewis has been really good. He had 15 points against Wisconsin. But Caleb Love struggled. He only had 6. And I just don't know if they consistently have the guys outside of those 3 to get you points. They're going to need Trey Townsend, the transfer from Oakland. Kentucky fans, cover your ears. Oakland, yes, the team that ended your season last year. And then Carter Bryant, the freshman off the bench. I think that Tommy Lloyd needs to be a little bit more aggressive with him. Sorry, I had something in my eye right there. Forgive me for kind of doing a weird blink. But anyway, enough of that. Point being, I worry about Arizona big picture. I worry about their depth big picture. I don't worry about them in this game, though. And my official pick in this game is Arizona to win, Arizona to cover. I'll say Arizona 82, Duke 74. Now, I know what you're going to say. Torres, you just said Arizona doesn't have enough scoring. Well, remember, home court advantage in college basketball is huge. It's huge in college football, too, right? Think about college football. All the big games this year. Georgia beats Tennessee at home. Tennessee beats Bama at home. Bama beats Georgia at home. Whatever. Ole Miss beats Georgia at home. LSU beats Ole Miss at home. Texas A&M beats LSU at home. In college basketball, it's the same. And think about the early season results so far. Think about the fact that Purdue beats Alabama at home. Then Purdue goes on the road, struggles against Marquette. That Arizona struggled at Wisconsin. And so this is Duke's first big road test. And I do think the matchup for this particular game, I think, works out well. Caleb Love always brings his best for Duke. We talked about it last year in the lead up to this game. Remember, Arizona won at Cameron Indoor last year early in the season. Of course, Caleb Love sent Coach K into retirement. At North Carolina, obviously, Coach K beat Coach K in his final game at Cameron Indoor, then beat him again in the Final Four in 2022. Last year, he wins at Cameron Indoor with Arizona. He always brings his best for this Duke game. I also think Arizona weirdly matches up pretty well with Duke. They got some big bodies they can throw at Cooper Flagg. KJ Lewis, I think, has a chance to kind of slow down Cooper Flagg as much as you can. Krivas, who's been a little bit banged up, is getting healthy. I think he kind of neutralizes the paint. So I do like Arizona to win this game. I think it'll be a fun one. I hope everybody enjoys it. By the way, Duke playing Kansas in Vegas on Tuesday night after this. So they go to Tucson. Then my assumption is they go straight to Vegas. I'll actually be at that Vegas game on Tuesday. Cannot wait to get there. I have Arizona beating Duke. A little preview. I think Duke is going to beat Kansas in Vegas when they play next week. Really quickly, let's get out of here on this. I said it a minute ago. Feast week, one of my favorite weeks of the year. So much college basketball. We're not going to preview all the big events, but the Maui Invitational, it's a classic. And one, it's an incredible field. You can see it on the bottom of the screen. UConn's there. Michigan State's there. North Carolina's there. Auburn's there. Iowa State, don't forget, Iowa State is a top 10 team right now. Iowa State is there as well. Before we make our official picks, before we get into the bracket, there is something I do want to mention. I actually saw this. It was a little bit of a bummer, but, UConn is in the event, okay? And one of the local papers in Connecticut was talking to the UConn administration, and they did an article in the paper, so it's not like some off-the-record thing, but in the Connecticut paper, there was an article earlier this week that said something to the effect of, UConn fans, if you're going to Maui, enjoy it. It might be the last trip for a while. And the insinuation is basically this, is that in this NIL era, the Maui Invitational, where you got to fly 6 time zones away, you're 8 hours from home, whatever. Is it really worthwhile? Is it really worth the travel and the expense? Or does it make more sense to play a home game, to play a neutral site game where you split half the gate? So hypothetically, instead of UConn playing North Carolina in the championship game here, do you just play at Madison Square Garden and split the gate? Obviously Vegas this coming week has the NIL tournament, where every team gets $1 million guaranteed to show up. That's with Alabama, with San Diego State, with Oregon, with Houston, on and on. So I just bring it up because I don't want to start with a doubter, but this could be the last Maui as we know it. The 2025 field does not look great, by the way. We can discuss that, next November, but this field is awesome. So let's go ahead and break it down. Producer Matt, if you have the field, I already explained half of it, but we'll get the matchups. UConn plays Memphis to open the event. Colorado plays Michigan State. Auburn plays Iowa State. Dayton plays North Carolina. So just want to kind of give my quick thoughts on this event. First of all, the UConn thing, I think it's really interesting. They open with Memphis. Memphis, to their credit, has actually played a couple pretty good teams. They beat Missouri to open the season. They fly all the way out to Las Vegas, beat UNLV. They're 3-0. Now, it is worth noting, Memphis actually plays on Friday night at San Francisco, University of San Francisco. So I only bring it up because they could take a loss before the tournament starts. We're not previewing it before them. But I think this is an interesting opening matchup because Memphis is playing well. And we talked about Dan Hurley's comments on after the game that UConn played on Tuesday. He called UConn, quote, comically bad in that game. And so I think it speaks to the fact that I think UConn has a lot of stuff to work on. For people who aren't familiar with UConn's roster, I think the difference between this year and previous years is the idea that basically they're probably deeper than they've been in years past. But listen, they only played 7 guys last year. They didn't need to be deep. And so I bring it up because this year they have more guys, but they haven't really figured out roles yet. Again, Dan Hurley calling them comically bad after a 36-point win. With that said, I can't see them losing to Memphis. Memphis' best player, by the way, PJ Haggerty, transfer in from Tulsa, where he was one of the leading scorers in college basketball this year, averaging 26 points per game to start the season. But I do like UConn to win the opener. And by the way, if you haven't figured it out, I'm going to give you my official Maui Invitational picks before we get out of here. Second game, Colorado, Michigan State. We don't have to spend a ton of time. We've talked enough Colorado on this show. Okay. So we talk Colorado football. We won't talk too much Colorado basketball. They play Michigan State. I was very underwhelmed by Michigan State in that opener in the Champions Classic, but I think they get the win here. Thing that stood out, they got a couple pretty athletic guys, Cohen Carr, Jace Richardson, who is of course Jason Richardson's son. Go ahead and give me Michigan State to advance to the semifinals. I'll tell you this. I think it is a 9:00 Eastern start on Monday. Okay. If you got the week off, if you're chilling at home, this is the game you want to watch. Top 10 matchup between Auburn and Iowa State. Okay. So Auburn, to me, Auburn fans tell me that I never give them credit for anything. So let me give them credit for this. I think Auburn's actually the best team that I've seen in college basketball so far this year. They're up to number 4 in the polls. Remember, they beat Houston in Houston a few weeks ago. Great game. That was after the, as Jeff Goodman called it, the horseplay on the flight that led to the flight landing. That was a great win, though. And so for Auburn, I think the big story, obviously, listen, Janai Broome, their center, former Morehead State guy, he is awesome. This is his 3rd year at Auburn, and he is just a star, okay? 20 points, 11 boards per game. In that Houston game, he had 29 and 5 blocks against Houston. When you wear your big boy pants like that against Houston, you're a ball player. I think what's interesting about Auburn, Tahad Pettiford Tahad Pettiford had 21 points against Houston. Freshman, he looked like this incredible difference maker. He has struggled outside of that game. Iowa State's kind of interesting because they're kind of this tough physical team, but I bring it up because the physicality, they have 2 really good guards. I don't know that their bigs can handle Janai Broome. So go ahead and give me Auburn to win this game. This is the game of the first round. Top 25 matchup. So intrigued, so excited. I do like Auburn to win this game. But this is the gift and the curse. And this is the part that's really fun about playing in these MTEs early in the season, is that somebody is going to go home with a loss, maybe 2, that's actually pretty good. Final game of the first round. It is the night game, Monday night. North Carolina against Dayton. Dayton, really good story, really good mid-major team. They obviously lost Kobe Brea, who's now playing at Kentucky. And of course, on top of that, they lost Deron Holmes to the NBA, but they're 5-0, really haven't been tested necessarily. But overall, very good team, very good defensive team. They don't shoot the ball well. Best player, probably, in my opinion, Zed Key, who began his career at Dayton or at Ohio State, excuse me. But I do think North Carolina, listen, we saw them against Kansas. They easily could have won that game. I like North Carolina to advance. Top half of the bracket, Michigan State versus UConn. Listen, Michigan State, I'm just not sold on. I think UConn has its issues that it's got to work out, but I think UConn wins that game. Too much scoring from UConn. UConn has 5 guys on the court at all times that can score. So give me UConn to win the game. I think the bottom half of that bracket, Auburn versus North Carolina, that's going to be another great game. Again, North Carolina's really good, only lost by 3 at Kansas. They play Auburn. I don't know that North Carolina has an answer for Janai Broome. What was the big issue with North Carolina when we talked about them in the preseason and in the summer? They kept missing on big men in the portal. Wanted Cliff Omoyori. He ended up at Alabama. Wanted Jonas Adu. He ended up at Arkansas. They don't have a true 5 guy. I think Janai Broome cooks. Setting up the producer Matt versus Torres game in the championship. That would be Auburn versus UConn. For people, again, who don't know, producer Matt went to Auburn. I went to UConn. And I'll say this, everyone says Torres is a UConn homer. I'm going to pick Auburn to win this game. One, UConn, Terrace Reed, their backup center, who's kind of their starting center. They don't have a ton of like physicality in the front court. They got big athletic guys, Liam McNeely, Jaden Ross, Jalen Stewart. But do they have a guy that can really match up with Janai Broome? I think that's a game where Terrace Reed, the transfer from Michigan, will have to be great. But I think Auburn is just further along right now. I think UConn is going to get there, but they lost 4 players to the NBA draft. So go ahead and give me Auburn to win the Maui Invitational. All right. I think that's it for this episode of the Aaron Torres Pod. Appreciate everybody logging in here on a Thursday afternoon. We covered a lot of ground. If you're not subscribed to the show, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure that you are subscribed. Appreciate everybody tuning in. It was just such an awesome show. By the way, getting a couple Maui questions. Chaminade is in the event every other year, so they will be in it next year. Also, Auburn, UConn would be awesome, and I totally agree. All right, if you're not subscribed, make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. The live chat was awesome today. Thank you for everybody who's tuning in. And that's really it. Tell you what, I'll be back Monday to recap a busy Saturday in college football. And then on top of that, we'll probably do our college football preview show on like Tuesday or Wednesday, and we'll have a midweek show at some point. Don't know exactly what the schedule is for next week. May even go live from Vegas after Kansas too. Time for me to go. Time for me to get out of here. Appreciate everybody's support. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Reddick, you F-head. Unblock me, bro. I'll be back Sunday night on the YouTube channel. Aaron Torres.